Net America presents The Soldier, Day Zero, a multi-part serialized event. And now, please enjoy Part 3. Chapter 1. The concussion blast ripped through the office, tearing the damaged wall completely free from the others, collapsing down onto Sergeant Flint's legs. The pain was minimal, however, thanks to the flimsy material, but it was heavy enough to hinder his movement. Dust and smoke filled the room as the ringing in everyone's ears kept them on the ground. The acrid smell of explosives mixed with the copper scent of fresh blood, creating a nauseating combination that burned the nostrils. Flint was flat on his back, his slung rifle digging into him, causing more pain than the fallen wall. The hard metal pressed uncomfortably against his spine, forcing him to shift his weight, despite the debris pinning his legs. As he struggled to regain his bearings, he heard excited moaning coming from the direction of his legs. The sound cut through the ringing in his ears, instantly focusing his attention. He looked down, spotting a zombie that was missing the bottom half of its body crawling along the ground. The creature's intestines trailed behind it, leaving a glistening trail of blood and fluids across the floor. Its arms reached forward with desperate hunger, fingers clawing at the tile as it pulled itself toward the pinned sergeant. Flint looked around for a weapon, spotting his sidearm, which was just out of reach to his right. The handgun had been knocked from his grip by the explosion, skittering across the floor to rest tantalizingly close, yet impossibly far. He struggled to break free from the wall, but the added weight of the zombie crawling towards him made it difficult. Each movement caused the debris to shift, pinning him more securely as the creature inched closer. Sergeant Flint yelled out as he kept reaching for his handgun. Hearing the zombie crawl closer and closer to him, his fingertips brushed against the barrel, but he couldn't quite get enough of a grip to pull it toward him. The creature's moans grew louder, its hunger seemingly intensifying as it closed the distance to its helpless prey. Sergeant Flint strained every muscle in his body, trying to reach the gun, constantly glancing down at the zombie crawling towards him. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he stretched his arm to its limit, the metal surface of the weapon slipping away from his grasp each time he nearly touched it. The ghoul's fingertips got within inches of him when he heard a yell coming from the far side of the room. "Sergeant Ketch." Flint looked over to the young store employee, watching as she tossed a heavy glass paperweight over to him. Charlotte's face was etched with determination, her earlier shock replaced by focused action. He tracked it through the air, thankful that her aim was on target, the makeshift weapon landing solidly in his hand. The weight of it felt reassuring, substantial enough to do real damage. In a single motion, he swung it as hard as he could towards the zombie's head, slamming it on the temple. An audible crack filled the air as a spurt of blood squirted out. The impact sent a shock wave through his arm, but the satisfying sound of breaking bone told him his strike had found its mark. The creature slumped down onto the fallen wall, motionless. Its arms went limp, fingers no longer clawing at the air with murderous intent. Flint used the paperweight to hit it on the back of the head once more, just to be sure. The second blow created a wet, crushing sound as skull fragments scattered across the debris. He stared at it, looking for any signs of life, but not finding any. The vacant eyes that had moments before been filled with primal hunger now stared sightlessly at nothing. Flint let out a sigh of relief as he relaxed, laying flat on the ground for a moment. His heart hammered in his chest, adrenaline still coursing through his system as he processed how close he'd come to becoming zombie food. A moment later, Charlotte, Leo, and Owen came out from hiding, coming over to him. Their faces were pale, eyes wide with the shock of what they'd just witnessed. Dust covered their clothing and hair, making them look like survivors of some industrial accident, rather than store employees caught in humanity's worst nightmare. "Are you okay, Flint?" Leo asked. "I'll be a lot better once you get this thing off of me," Flint replied. Leo nodded as he and Owen grabbed the zombie corpse. their faces twisting in disgust as they handled the mangled remains. They dragged it off the fallen wall, the creature's remaining entrails leaving a slick trail across the floor. Working together, they lifted the collapsed barrier just enough for the sergeant to slide out. Charlotte grabbed Flint by the arms, pulling him back to free him from the wreckage. Flint sat up, running his hands down his legs, making sure that they were still in one piece. They stung a bit from the impact and debris, but all in all, they were in good shape. He flexed his ankles and bent his knees, testing for any serious injury. Finding none, he felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. Owen stepped over, offering him a hand to pull the sergeant back to his feet. "What in the hell was that?" Owen asked. "Hillbilly dynamite," Flint said. Owen gave the sergeant a confused look, his brow furrowing as he processed the unfamiliar term. "A pipe bomb," Flint explained. Flint drew his handgun, giving it a quick check before turning his attention to the front of the store. The weapon felt familiar in his grip, a comforting weight that reminded him he wasn't completely helpless in this nightmare scenario. He checked the magazine, noting he still had several rounds remaining. "What are you going to do?" Charlotte asked. "Go introduce myself," Flint said. Flint muttered curses under his breath, not pleased with the tactics employed by his would-be rescuer. Whoever had thrown that bomb had nearly killed them all in his attempt to help. As he stepped out of what was left of the office, he heard a smattering of gunshots popping off from outside. The reports echoed through the store, mixing with the distant moans of zombies still wandering the parking lot. Each shot was followed by a brief moment of silence before the next volley began. Flint kept his handgun at his side as he laid eyes on the redneck standing at the front entrance. The man was exactly what he'd expected based on the improvised explosive device. Overweight, wearing a stained shirt and jeans, with the kind of unkempt beard that suggested he'd given up on personal grooming long before the zombie outbreak began. Despite his disheveled appearance, he carried his shotgun with the confidence of someone who knew how to use it. The man looked over to the sergeant, giving him a playful wave as if they were old friends meeting at a barbecue, rather than survivors in a zombie-infested store. "Hey there, man. Sorry about my little party favor there. That one packed a little more punch than I thought it would," the man said. Flint was angry at nearly being blown up, however. The sincerity from the man calmed him down. There was no malice in his voice, just genuine regret at having used more force than necessary. "No harm, no foul," Flint said. "Is everybody okay in there?" the man asked. "My ears are ringing like a son of a bitch, but other than that, we're all right," Flint replied. "Good deal, man," the stranger said. "If you don't mind me asking, just what are you doing here anyway?" Flint asked. "Whole world's gone crazy, man. We're here to get some food before hightailing it out of town," the man explained. "Where are you going?" Flint asked. "The hell if I know, man, but it sure as shit ain't gonna be here," the man replied. Flint let out a chuckle, appreciating the honesty. At least the guy wasn't pretending to have some master plan, when clearly nobody knew what they were doing anymore. Before he could respond, however, the gunfire coming from outside the store picked up. At first, it was a smattering of shots, before devolving into full-blown panic fire. The disciplined spacing between shots gave way to rapid, desperate volleys that suggested the shooters were being overwhelmed. The redneck turned around to look back through the front door to see what was going on. Despite the distance, Flint could see the fear in the man's eyes as he processed whatever was happening in the parking lot. The playful demeanor vanished instantly, replaced by stark terror. The redneck let out a scream as he raised his shotgun, firing before he had a chance to aim. The blast echoed through the store entrance, followed immediately by the sound of buckshot striking flesh and bone. A split second later, several zombies rushed through the entrance, slamming into the man and driving him back to the ground. The creatures moved with the terrifying speed that Flint had come to expect from them. Their clothes were torn and blood-stained, faces twisted into masks of hunger and rage. The man's screams filled the air as the ghouls ripped into his flesh, tearing out multiple chunks with their teeth and fingernails. Blood sprayed across the white tile floor, creating abstract patterns of violence. Flint raised his handgun but didn't fire, knowing that it was a lost cause. The man was already disappearing beneath a writhing mass of undead, his screams growing weaker as blood loss took its toll. The sergeant turned back towards the office, stepping over and grabbing Charlotte by the hand and pulling her towards him. The other two men followed them as they ran towards the back of the store, their footsteps echoing off the high ceiling. Flint looked over to the front entrance, spotting half a dozen zombies running in. They moved through the remains without pause, driven by an insatiable hunger for living flesh. Blood dripped from their mouths and hands, but their vacant eyes were already scanning for new prey. Several of them immediately took notice of the survivors, chilling moans filling the air as they began running after them. The sound grew in volume as more creatures joined the pursuit, creating a chorus of hunger that sent ice through Flint's veins. "Damn it," Flint cursed. Flint raised his handgun, firing a couple shots at the zombies as they ran. The projectiles hit them center mass, doing little to slow them down. The creatures stumbled momentarily but kept coming. "Follow me," Leo called out. Flint wasn't in a position to question it, instead falling into line at the rear behind the others as they ran down one of the shopping aisles. Leo moved with purpose, clearly knowing the store's layout better than anyone else. His younger legs carried him swiftly between the shelves, weaving around displays and obstacles with ease. The moans and footsteps intensified, the creatures excited at the prospect of a fresh meal. As the survivors crossed over the center aisle, Flint grabbed onto a display rack, yanking it down in the hopes that it would slow the pursuing creatures down. The metal structure crashed to the floor, sending canned goods rolling in every direction. The foursome got halfway down the aisle when they heard zombies getting tripped up by the makeshift diversion. Flint glanced over his shoulder, spotting two zombies face-planting on the ground, their momentum carrying them into the scattered debris. However, the others continued their pursuit, simply trampling over their fallen companions without pause. Leo led the group to the back aisle, cutting hard to the right, the others following close behind. Flint stopped at the edge of the aisle, turning around and opening fire with his sidearm. His aim was true, hitting the lead zombie in the head, dropping it to the ground and creating a bit of a logjam in the narrow aisle. Brain matter splattered against the shelving units, and the creature's sudden collapse caused those behind it to stumble and slow their advance. Flint turned and picked up the pace, catching up with the others as Leo threw open the door to the back storage room. The employee waved at the sergeant, trying to get him to pick up the pace as the sound of pursuing footsteps grew closer. "Come on, man, move it," Leo shouted. Flint ran hard, cutting hard to the left and stumbling through the door. His lungs burned from exertion, but he pushed through the threshold into the relative safety of the storage area. Once clear, Leo closed it up, helping Charlotte and Owen pull over a heavy box to secure it. The cardboard container was filled with what felt like canned goods, providing substantial weight against the door. They positioned it carefully, ensuring it would hold against any pressure from the other side. The four of them took a step back, listening as zombies smacked against it on the other side. The impacts reverberated through the metal door, but the barrier held firm. The group held their breath as the banging continued, relieved when the box didn't move and the door remained secure. Sergeant Flint turned his attention to the storage room, which was large, with multiple bay doors along the far wall. Towering shelves lined the space, filled with inventory and supplies. He kept his gun at the ready, in case a creature was hiding in the shadows, but relaxed as Charlotte came over. "Don't worry, we're alone in here," Charlotte said. "I wish I had your confidence," Flint replied. "There's only one way in and it's blocked up. If one of those people were back here, they'd be on us by now, wouldn't they?" Charlotte asked. Flint thought about it for a moment before relaxing, lowering his weapon and holstering it. Her logic was sound. The creatures weren't known for their patience or stealth. If any zombies had been trapped back here, they would have made their presence known immediately. "It looks like the door's holding," Leo observed. "But it wouldn't hurt my feelings if we put a few more boxes against it," Owen said. Flint nodded in agreement before walking back over to them. The more barriers they could put between themselves and the undead horde, the better their chances of survival. "Let's get it reinforced, then we can figure out what we're going to do." Chapter 2. Sergeant Flint stood guard at the door to the storeroom, staring at the stack of boxes as the creatures continued to push against it. The makeshift barricade groaned under the pressure, but the heavy cardboard containers held their position. Despite the number of ghouls on the other side growing seemingly by the minute, the barrier remained solid. "How are we looking, Flint?" Leo asked. "It's going to hold, at least for the moment," Flint replied. "Hopefully it holds longer than that, because I have no desire to go out there," Leo said. The young man's voice carried a tremor that he was trying hard to suppress. His earlier confidence had been shaken by witnessing the redneck's brutal death, and the reality of their situation was settling in with crushing weight. "I'm assuming there isn't a way to lock that down?" Flint asked. Leo shook his head no, his expression grim as he delivered the bad news. "It's a swinging door, so there's no latch, let alone a lock," Leo explained. "Yeah, that figures," Flint muttered. Flint motioned to Owen to take his spot, keeping watch so that he and Leo could walk away. The older man did as instructed, positioning himself where he could monitor both the door and the boxes that secured it. The sergeant walked along the wall, looking at the stacks of boxes, reading the shipping information on the side. Most of it was mundane household goods, small kitchen appliances, dishes, nothing that would be useful in their current situation. He scanned label after label, hoping to find something that might help them survive or escape, but finding only the typical retail inventory of a big box store. Flint stopped halfway down the wall, letting out a smile when he read something on a box that caught his attention. He grabbed the cardboard container, ripping off the top before reaching in and pulling out a container of snack cakes. The colorful packaging looked almost absurdly cheerful given their circumstances, but his stomach reminded him that he hadn't eaten in hours. In a flash, the sergeant had freed the tasty treats from their plastic wrapping, tossing one over to Leo, who gladly took it. "It's not the healthiest breakfast, but it'll do in a pinch," Flint said. "And if this doesn't qualify as a pinch, I'm not sure what does," Leo replied. Flint raised his snack cake in a mock toast to Leo before diving in. As they ate, the sergeant continued walking down the line, spotting stacks of boxes holding various types of food. The two of them devoured the treats before continuing to talk. "Looks like there's enough here to last us a while," Flint observed. "Yeah, we got a food truck delivery yesterday. Half the stalkers called out, so most of it's still sitting back here," Leo explained. "Thank God for small miracles," Flint said. "I'm pretty sure there's some bedding in here too. Just have to dig around and find it," Leo added. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Flint said. Leo looked at the sergeant with confusion, at least until Flint pulled out his radio. He changed the frequency to the home base channel, clicking it on and speaking as calmly as he could manage. Come in base, this is Sergeant Flint," he transmitted. There was a long, tense silence before a voice came back over the radio. The static crackled between them, each second of delay adding to the mounting tension in the storage room. "What's your status, Sergeant Flint?" came the reply. "I am at the supercenter on the northeast part of town. I was on Captain Patterson's detail and things have gone south," Flint reported. "Gone south?" the voice asked. "Well, I'm the only one still standing and need immediate assistance," Flint explained. "Stand by," came the terse response. The line fell silent for what felt like an eternity, Flint and Leo exchanging concerned looks. The waiting was almost worse than the constant threat of the zombies. At least with the creatures, they knew what they were facing. This silence left them wondering if help was coming, or if they'd been abandoned completely. "Is this normal?" Leo whispered. "Nothing about this is normal," Flint replied quietly. The silence was finally broken by a woman's voice. She spoke with authority, as if she was fully in command, her tone crisp and professional, despite the chaos that must have been surrounding her position. "This is Captain Harris. Who am I speaking to?" she asked. "This is Sergeant Flint. Like I told the other guy, I was on Captain Patterson's detail and need immediate assistance," Flint responded. "Where is Captain Patterson?" Captain Harris asked. "He's dead, along with at least 2 of his squad. The other 2 are trapped in their SUV, assuming they're still alive," Flint reported. The words felt heavy as he spoke them. Each name represented a life lost, a family that would never see their loved one again. The weight of being the sole survivor pressed down on his shoulders. "And where are you?" she continued. "I'm trapped with 3 civilians in the back storeroom of the supercenter," Flint explained. "Hostiles?" Captain Harris inquired. "Dozens, probably more, swarming the store and parking lot," Flint replied. "Do you have transportation?" she asked. Flint stared at his radio incredulously, taking a beat before responding. The question seemed to ignore everything he just told her about their situation. "No, I don't have transportation. Did you not hear what I said? My team is dead and those people are swarming the target," Flint said, frustration creeping into his voice. "Forget the supercenter. That doesn't matter right now. Do you have the ability to get transportation?" Captain Harris pressed. Flint looked up to Leo, both of them confused by the unexpected line of questioning. The supercenter mission had been their primary objective, and now command was telling him to abandon it entirely? After a moment, Leo looked like he had a bright idea, holding his finger up to signal he needed a moment before running off towards the door where Charlotte and Owen waited. "Stand by, Captain," Flint transmitted. Flint watched as Leo brought Charlotte over, the 2 of them talking amongst themselves as they walked. "Why do you need my keys?" Charlotte asked. "I don't need them, but he does," Leo said, pointing to the sergeant. "You have a car?" Flint asked. Charlotte nodded, pulling out her keys and handing them over to the sergeant. There were only 2 keys on the ring, a house key and a car key, along with a bright pink unicorn keychain. Flint looked at it for a moment before letting out a chuckle at the absurdity of it all. "You don't mind if I borrow your car?" Flint asked. "As long as you promise to send us some help," Charlotte replied. Her voice carried a note of desperation that made Flint's chest tighten. These people were depending on him, trusting him to find a way to save them all. "I'll see what I can do," Flint promised. Flint nodded to her before pulling the radio up and clicking it on, hoping that Captain Harris was still waiting for his response. "All right, Captain, I have transportation," Flint reported. "Good. I need you to get over to the Riverside Casino," Captain Harris instructed. "Captain, the building is swarming with those things, and I have civilians who need assistance," Flint protested. "Sergeant, I need you to get someplace where only you can hear me," Captain Harris said firmly. Those words sent a chill through Flint, who glanced up at the others. The tone in her voice suggested that whatever she was about to tell him wasn't meant for civilian ears. The others nodded in understanding and walked away, giving the sergeant the privacy he'd been requested to provide. "Okay, Captain, I'm alone," Flint confirmed. "Sergeant, I'm going to level with you. We're getting our asses kicked out there. I've lost 3 teams in the last hour, and the general has ordered all personnel back to base." "You're the only person I have left out in the field," Captain Harris explained. The words hit Flint like a physical blow. 3 entire teams lost in a single hour spoke to the scope of the disaster they were facing. If trained military personnel were being overwhelmed so quickly, what chance did civilians have? Flint let out a sigh, shaking his head before responding to the devastating news. "Is that your way of telling me that I can't expect a rescue?" Flint asked. "Even if I had clearance to send people out, You wouldn't be the priority, Captain Harris admitted. I'll try not to take that personally, Flint replied dryly. That's good because I need your help, Sergeant, Captain Harris said. Well, I hope it's good because at the moment I'm sitting pretty with a pallet full of snack cakes, Flint responded, trying to inject some levity into the grim conversation. Sergeant, the world is going to look very different when the sun comes up. I'm not talking about us surviving as a country. I'm talking about us surviving as a species, Captain Harris said soberly. Those words took Flint's breath away. He'd known the situation was bad, but the implication that humanity itself was at risk made his knees feel weak. Okay, I'm listening, Flint said quietly. There's a VIP at the Riverside Casino. Her name is Dr. Ann Caldwell. I don't know exactly what she's a doctor of, but she's on our list of people to rescue, Captain Harris explained. If she's so important, then why aren't you sending a team out to get her? Flint asked. I did, and they stopped responding, came the ominous reply. Flint let out a sigh, knowing exactly what that meant. Another team lost, more good soldiers who wouldn't be coming home. And what makes you think I'm going to be able to do what they couldn't? Flint asked. Honestly, Sergeant, I'm grasping at straws, and you're the last one in the box, Captain Harris admitted. Flint let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head at the brutal honesty of the statement. I appreciate the honesty there, Captain, Flint said. I figure we're well past the bullshit stage, Sergeant. Now the General won't let me send out another team to track her down. However, if you can get her to the roof, I can get a chopper to you, Captain Harris offered. Do we know where she is in the building? Flint asked. I have no clue. She was a part of a bachelorette party that checked in last night, Captain Harris replied. Well, that should narrow it down, Flint said sarcastically. So you'll do it? Captain Harris asked. Flint paused for a moment, considering his options. Stay here and hope the door held while they slowly starved, or venture out into a zombie-infested casino on what amounted to a suicide mission. Neither option appealed to him, but at least the mission offered a chance of rescue. Yeah, Captain, I'll do it, Flint agreed. Thank you, Sergeant, and move fast, because you're on a clock, Captain Harris warned. How much time do I have? Flint asked. A few hours at most. The base is under evacuation orders given the deteriorating conditions out there, she explained. Copy that, Captain. I'll get it done and be in touch, Flint promised. Thank you, Sergeant. Watch your ass out there, Captain Harris said. Flint clicked the radio off, securing it to his belt before walking back to the others. Their faces were etched with worry and hope, desperately wanting good news but prepared for the worst. So what did they say? Is help coming? Leo asked. You're on your own, I'm afraid, Flint replied. The words seemed to physically deflate Charlotte, her shoulders sagging as the last of her hope evaporated. What about you? Charlotte asked. Flint let out a long sigh, shaking his head as he contemplated the mission ahead of him. It looks like I get to go hit the tables at the Riverside Casino. Chapter 3. Owen, Charlotte, and Leo stared at Sergeant Flint in disbelief, not sure of what to make of his statement. The silence stretched between them as the implications of his words sank in. The Riverside Casino? Are you crazy? Leo asked. Probably. How bad is it? Flint replied. Charlotte's face went pale at the mention of the casino, her eyes widening with a mixture of fear and revulsion. She wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to ward off some invisible chill. I wouldn't go to the Riverside Casino on a good day, let alone today, Charlotte said. Seems about par for the course, Flint replied grimly. What is so important out there? Owen asked. Dr. Ann Caldwell. I have no idea who she is or what she knows, but somebody way above my pay grade wants her safe, Flint explained. Leo and Owen exchanged a shrug, not having a comeback to it. The name meant nothing to any of them, but if the military was willing to risk lives to save her, she had to be important. Charlotte let out a sad sigh, her shoulders sagging under the weight of their situation. "So what are we supposed to do?" Charlotte asked. Flint thought about it for a moment, deciding on what to tell them. He had information that wasn't public knowledge, but if it wasn't for them, he would have died in electronics. They deserved to know the truth, even if it wasn't what they wanted to hear. "You're in the safest spot you're going to get. Whatever is happening out there is going downhill fast, and it has the higher-ups spooked," Flint said. "Spooked?" Owen asked. "Yeah, the military is retreating to God only knows where. So when I say spooked, I mean spooked," Flint explained. The three civilians exchanged worried, confused looks. The idea that the military itself was retreating painted a picture of hopelessness that none of them wanted to confront. If trained soldiers with heavy weapons couldn't handle the situation, what chance did ordinary people have? "So no help is coming?" Charlotte asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't think so," Flint admitted. "Just hang tight here for as long as you can. With any luck, the government is just overreacting and you'll be home within a week," Flint said. Flint tried his best to sound convincing, but it wasn't going over well. His voice lacked the confidence needed to sell such an optimistic scenario, and they all knew it. Leo let out a chuckle, patting the sergeant on the shoulder with a mixture of appreciation and resignation. "Appreciate the lie, Flint, but you should really stick to your day job," Leo said. Flint joined Leo in a laugh, nodding that the employee was right. There was no point in maintaining false hope when the truth was so obviously dire. "Sorry, I wish I had better news for you," Flint said. "It's all good, Sergeant. Come on, let's get you on your way," Leo replied. Despite everything, Leo maintained his composure and determination to help. The young man had proven himself to be resourceful and level-headed under pressure, qualities that would serve him well in the days ahead. Leo led them over to the back door of the building, sliding open the small observation slit so that he could see outside. The narrow opening provided a limited view of the rear loading area, but it was better than going in blind. The back area of the building was clear, at least from his vantage point. "It looks like you're good," Leo reported. "Thanks. Charlotte, where are you parked?" Flint asked. "I'm on the street side of the lot, about halfway up underneath the streetlight. It's a light blue sedan, you can't miss it," Charlotte explained. Flint nodded, patting his pocket to make sure the keys were secure before drawing his sidearm. The familiar weight of the weapon in his hand provided some small comfort, though he knew he was woefully under-equipped for what lay ahead. He pulled out the magazine, seeing it had a couple of rounds left, replacing it with a fresh one from his belt. "Okay, once I'm out the door, you lock it up tight, and don't open it up again until help arrives," Flynn instructed. "I'll take care of it, Sergeant. Good luck out there," Leo said. The sincerity in the young man's voice was touching. Despite barely knowing each other, they had formed a bond forged in crisis. Flint nodded before turning to the door, mentally preparing himself to go back out into the danger. With a thumbs up, Leo opened the door. Flint darted outside, raising his handgun to the ready, scanning the back of the store for zombies but seeing nothing. He reached down to his boot, pulling out a knife, keeping it in his offhand. Flint moved up to the side of the building, stopping as he heard movement coming from around the corner. He pressed his back against the brick wall, trying to control his breathing as he listened. He poked his head out carefully, spotting two creatures walking towards the back, as if they heard the door shut and couldn't figure out where the sound was coming from. Their movements were purposeful but confused, drawn by the noise but lacking the intelligence to pinpoint its source. The sergeant retreated back behind cover, debating with himself on how to handle the situation. The direct approach carried its own risks, but it would be quick. He looked at his knife, shaking his head at the other thought forming in his mind. "Well, this is a terrible idea," Flint muttered to himself. Flint used the tip of the blade to gently tap against the side of the building, sending a small metallic ping out into the air. The sound was subtle but distinct, exactly the kind of noise that would attract the creature's attention. A split second later, both zombies started sprinting towards the back of the store. The first zombie ran around the corner at full speed, getting tripped up as Flint stuck his leg out. The creature's momentum carried it forward, unable to adjust its course or maintain its balance. The ghoul fell face first onto the pavement with a sickening crunch, buying the sergeant a crucial moment to deal with the second threat. The next creature reached out for Flint with grasping hands, only to have its arms knocked away by a well-timed defensive move. The impact spun the zombie around, opening it up for a knife strike. Its vacant eyes showed no recognition of pain or danger, only the endless hunger that drove it forward. The sergeant jammed the blade into the base of the zombie's skull, finding the sweet spot that would sever the brainstem. The creature went limp instantly, its body becoming dead weight in his hands. He kept a firm grip on the back of its shirt, driving it down onto the fallen creature that was scrambling back to its feet. Their combined weight shoved the first zombie back to the ground, pinning it beneath the corpse of its companion. Its arms flailed about wildly, struggling for enough traction to get back up. The creature's moans were muffled by the weight pressing down on it, but its determination to reach living flesh remained undiminished. Flint stabbed wildly around the side of the dead ghoul, unable to get a clean look at the live one just below. The angle was awkward, and he had to work blind, feeling for resistance as the blade sought its target. After several violent stabs, he struck pay dirt, the blade entering through the ear canal and into the brain. The struggling ceased immediately, the creature's limbs going slack as the knife found its mark. The sergeant continued pushing down on the creatures for a moment, making sure that they were motionless before getting up. Blood pooled around the bodies, dark stains spreading across the concrete. Flint darted back to the corner of the building, looking out and making sure the noise hadn't attracted any others. The sounds of the brief struggle had been relatively quiet, but in the stillness of the night, even small noises could carry far. Much to his relief, none were running towards his position. The sergeant stared out into the parking lot, seeing lots of movement in the distance. Dozens of figures shambled between the abandoned vehicles, their movements creating a constantly shifting maze of death. He continued scanning the lot, spotting Charlotte's light blue sedan exactly where she'd described it, about 80 yards away under a bright streetlight. Flint came out from behind the building, moving up alongside it, sticking to the shadows cast by the exterior lighting. Each step was calculated, his eyes constantly scanning for threats while his ears strained to detect any change in the creature's behavior. He got to the front of the building, looking out and getting a full view of the lot. Dozens of creatures milled about, several clustered around the wrecked SUV, where the injured soldiers had been trapped. It was hard for him to get a good look at his counterparts from this distance, and for a brief moment he contemplated mounting a rescue attempt. The thought of leaving fellow soldiers behind went against everything he'd been trained to believe. Those thoughts went away once he noticed a broken window on the vehicle. A zombie was wedged inside, its torso hanging through the shattered glass. Blood splattered the interior, dark stains that told a story he didn't want to contemplate. He shook his head, knowing that the soldiers were likely goners. Flint put it out of his mind, getting his focus back on the task at hand, reaching Charlotte's car. He looked around, seeing the closest zombies were clustered near the front entrance of the store. The path to the sedan would take him through relatively open ground, but speed would have to substitute for stealth. "Just run like hell, get into the car, and get moving. You got this, now move," Flint whispered to himself. Slim broke out from cover, running hard towards the car, knowing that every step he put between him and the growing mob bought him precious seconds. His boots pounded against the asphalt, the sound echoing off the nearby buildings. Several zombies heard his footfalls immediately, their heads snapping in his direction before they began their pursuit. The moans started low and spread like wildfire through the lot. More creatures took notice, abandoning their aimless wandering to focus on the living prey in their midst. As he got within 30 yards of the car, he reached into his pocket and grabbed the keys, hitting the unlock button without thinking. Much to his horror, the lights on the car flashed, and the horn gave a short, sharp honk. The sound cut through the night like a beacon, announcing his location to every zombie within earshot. He cursed himself for the rookie mistake. Just past the car, his eyes caught movement as half a dozen zombies emerged from the darkened area of the adjacent lot. The creatures had been hidden in the shadows, but the car's alarm had drawn them out like moths to a flame. They ran hard towards the vehicle, drawn by the noise and the promise of fresh meat. A bit of panic hit Flint as he realized the zombies were closer to the car than he was. Oh my God. Will Sergeant Flint reach the car in time and escape the clutches of the hungry undead? Be sure to tune into the next exciting episode of The Soldier, Day Zero to find out.